Welcome to Blueprint. I took y'all here to Camboriú in Santa Catarina, Brazil. It's one of my favorite places. It's definitely touristic. When it comes to the language, one of the most basic things that I could do was to help us create what I call kind of like, it's setting the table. The blueprint is the most basic print because everything is going to, in a way, tie back into that. We're going to learn about this tool because moving forward, you're going to need to use that. So usually when I have clients come into therapy, right, we're talking about situations where they haven't liked what they've done. Let's break things down into two different areas. We have wins and we have losses. So just a little bit of psychoeducation, okay? When you do something, you almost always receive automatic thoughts. What does that mean? That means that in that situation, because of what your mind has already registered from things you've done before or things that it's seen other people do, it already has, in a way, a preconceived idea or notion about what could occur. I always use the term currents with my clients. Being in the water, living in SoCal, going to school in LA, I learned how to surf. I can't call myself a surfer because I didn't do it the whole year, but there was a time that in learning how to surf, I didn't learn one of the few strategies in how to survive currents, relaxing my body and paddling sideways to get out of the current. The reason why I bring that up is because in life, we all have currents as well. And a lot of people haven't been doing the right things. Part of therapy, yes, we want to talk about your past. We want to redefine the past. We want to heal. But the way that it works, especially with my Freudian psychoeducation style, I help people move forward and start to kind of anticipate, let's say like volume. What turns them up and what turns them down? When someone's turned up, they're in a situation where they're receiving thoughts in a form of images or words that are causing them to become anxious. What does that cause? That causes them to maybe not go into the opportunity that they want to, the way that they would like to. So I start to keep track of what those images are, what those words are, and we call those messages. The reason why the brain gives us cognitive messages is because of the priorities of the brain. We need to understand that. We have the number one priority of the brain being to protect us. So when the brain protects us, it will give us distortions in justification to protect us, and we will go more in depth with this into the album. But for now, priority to protect, meaning that if you were going to meet someone for the first time in a place you've never met them before, you might get thoughts, images, or words that cause you to be anxious, depending on what's happened to you before. For example, it could even be maybe something happened in the past, didn't have the best date, interaction. The mind remembers that, and so it doesn't want you to experience pain or discomfort, and it'll give you those cognitive messages. Problem being that a lot of cognitive messages are diverting us from doing what we would like to do. Let's talk about how habits are formed before we get into reward and how that overrides protection in the brain. The first time you do anything, you teach the brain something and it actually can't be erased. It's good news and bad news because when you need a win, right? Wins are positive behaviors, desired behaviors. It'll never be erased. So I can help clients evolve with the right building blocks up until they get to where they need to. Unfortunately though, undesired behaviors, what we call losses, they also don't get erased. So as you can see us drawing pathways and mimicking the brain map, first time you do something, it's like the pathway gets created. It is a pathway, like a trail. Think of it as if it was people in winter, there's snow, right? And then if you're smart, you're gonna follow the trail of the truck before you so you can get as much traction as possible. He already went there. The brain works a lot like that too. So with pathways, when you do something, it can't be erased, whether it's good or whether it's bad. And we call the good ones wins, the bad ones losses. Good behaviors are desired behaviors, bad behaviors are undesired behaviors. I am a firm believer of giving the autonomy to people to decide what is desired and undesired and what they consider to be a win or a loss. But we have to understand what they've been through in order to take more control, okay? to take more control, just like an anchor on a yacht. We need to take control and stabilize and help ourselves redirect. Now, working with addiction, working with habits, let's talk about that. Addiction. What is addiction? Well, people act like as if you got bit by a snake and then you're addicted. That's not how addiction works. Addiction is actually a learned behavior that you have done over and over and over again. When you're in that situation, have those feelings, get those thoughts in the form of images and words. When you receive those cognitive messages, it's helping you do something even if there's consequences. Yeah, that's right. You could fall into a behavior that the minute you do it, you don't like that you've done it. You might even promise yourself you'll never do it again. But sure enough, you're getting messages from the mind wanting you to go back. Now, why would it ever do something like that? Well, that brings us up to how reward overrides protection. That's right. So even though we learned that when the brain's lying to you, it's justified because it's protecting you, but now the brain will lie to you if it's justified because of reward. What's reward? Any situation that's causing us some form of pleasure, some form of reward, let it be different, strange, exciting, bizarre, some sort of excitement, horror. There are ways to receive reward. Food is one of the hardest ones because we all have to eat. We all have to go through that pathway and select what we're choosing, right? And it's a choice we make all the time. And we will start to learn about more in depth, Breaking 500, about the importance of getting more wins than losses. And if you can notice now, the dam on the pathway going to the loss side, the ATM, we're going to talk more in depth about checking the receipt and making sure that you're able to understand your images and the words coming into your mind. And later in the collection, you're definitely going to understand how exactly to interpret those lies and correct them and reduce the powers to take more of an advantage into what you want to do. When it comes to helping people in life, helping them have whatever situation comes up, whatever feeling that they feel, whatever thought and cognitive message in the form of images or words that go through their mind, and have the ability to go the right way, to get wins, this curriculum comes back down into this very blueprint. This blueprint is necessary because any transaction that a client comes back into, they are telling me about what happened. So with the volume being turned up, it's anxious thoughts that usually affect their outcome, or the volume's turned down where they're getting cognitive thoughts that are promoting depression or hopelessness. Anxiety and depression are just symptoms. They are not answers. They are a way for us to get clinical coverage, but it's only where the journey really starts. So we just got done talking a little bit about wins and losses. When it comes to wins, you're seeing a money bag, and we will learn more about really what's in there. But let's just say that it's a form of currency and a form of savings, things that you can hold on to. Again, never be erased, right? So the wins, they're actually going to be victories, okay? And we are going to learn later about how rubies, AKA talents, really become the biggest form of our transaction in this life moving forward, and the difficulty behind having those type of choices. Because anything you want to do, you're more with your body, more with your mind, more with your family, more with your work, it's a talent. It's something that is worth being remembered for, and those desires do have better outcomes for people's success in their life. You'd be surprised about the amount of knowledge, body of knowledge. We're on the water, right? We've only discovered, what do they say, about 4% of the ocean. We know more about the ocean than the human brain. We don't know enough about the human brain. What we know is behavior. Behavior is when you do something and knowing what you did. So when clients come into therapy, I establish a relationship where I can know the reality of those images and those thoughts, those cognitive messages, despite the priorities of the brain of reward and protection, reward overriding protection, and I start to understand where they go. How did it feel? What was it like? And we start to learn cognitive filters. Going back to the dam on the way of the lost side, what are the cognitive filters? Well, I use a lot of imagery. You could look at it in a way of symbolism. I use something called cues. And all the tracks in this album have cues. And every cue is in the form of an image. And if you notice, if you think about a boat, see how quick that was? How about Some beautiful buildings. Well, I already got that one away from you, right? You can already see that. The cognitive filters in the form of cues allow me to use a variety of formulas to help people have an image in a form of a filter before they do something. For example, let's say that you gambled a lot of money and you're being tempted again to do that. Well, that's what I would call being in a current. When you're in a current, you're feeling negative, you're feeling tempted, you're feeling like your goals won't come true, you're wanting to do some sort of undesired behavior, but in the moment it feels desirable. Maybe that person's forgetting all of the transactions they've been having that were losses. And we would pull from that file and help them see the time that they lost all that money and couldn't pay rent and had to call their parents and ask for money or whatever it was. We strategically force the brain to consider things it didn't want to. And why would it not let you see things? Because it's doing its job. That's right, now you're learning the rules of the game. The brain, yes, it's a smart place, but you have to learn how to use it to be on top of your game with it. So when you start to learn the rules of the game with the blueprint, a lot of things start to become possible. Now, I use an example more of a flash from the past where somebody had gambled and didn't like the outcome.
Yeah, just kind of like that kind of took him out. Again, black community.
Fight could have gone either way, bro.
Any further introduction, Muhammad Ali.
Flashes are a form of a cognitive filter, anything from the past, where they see an image, they see a focus point, how they felt, and it's almost like they either see a still frame photo or a few seconds of a tape. There's a lot of movies that do a great example of that. Cinderella Man, based off that true story with Russell Crowe, and came out in early 2000s. You also have The Adderall Diaries, which also does a good form of flashes in that film that I've used with people clinically. Flashes are important. That's a cognitive filter. Cues are anything that has an image. Now those cues can be a variety of things. They can either just be a concept or it can be a framework. Now what's a framework versus a concept? Well, a framework is almost a working system like a cell that allows you to know how to put things together, and it almost updates itself and grows with you. Yeah, the blueprint is one of those. Because if you keep this blueprint as you go to your therapist and you start keeping track of all the losses that you've had, it will accumulate. And depending on how he's trained or how he does it or she does it, or they do it, you can utilize their powers as a clinician and have more understanding as to why you're being turned up or turned down, what the image is and what the words are, and where your habits are getting you to go one way or the other. Once you can do that, you start to form discipline. You start to isolate variables and know where to get wins. Another cognitive filter is visions. Yes, so that would be things that are in the future that haven't happened yet. Things that are in the future that we want to happen. But there's also things in the past, victories of the past, that we should remind ourselves. How come? Let's say you want to go work out and you're being tempted not to. Maybe there's some good food. Reward overrides protection. And you're getting messages. Well, why in the world should you go work out? Maybe you had a really good hike with some friends and you loved how you felt. See, if you use a flash, a cue, a vision, and you still get a loss, I'm forcing the mind to have to work a little bit harder to get you to do that. And then it gives me clues. Now, what are the clues? Well, justifications, excuses that the mind gives you to say, no. Even though I saw that filter, I still want to do that. And what do? I use my powers as seeing patterns and sequences, and I help psychoanalyze and know where in the past should I look. Like a metal detector, when you see people on the beach looking for some loose change, or if I lose one of these chains, they're looking for the gold. The power of habit, the power of pathways, the power of using the blueprint, it is essential. It is the foundational piece that you will see a lot of the puzzle being organized here. The meaning behind everything you've seen in the album, going into each track, helping you understand a little bit more of all these cues, and then how they also come together. Working together, the cues come together in a system. And if you think that by the end of this, you're like, wow, they do come together, we're just getting started. Think that like I'm building a transformer, you might only just have a hand when we're done. You're still not even like part of what we can become. but everything will puzzle together. Just like when I help people in coaching with football and sports, being a collegiate athlete, we build off of a foundation. The essentials is that foundation that we are building off of, and the blueprint is it.